This Week with Bob Mueller on News 2.
This week,
victims are becoming more afraid and criminals are becoming more bold. We have to reset from a criminal justice system to a victim justice system.
A conversation with businesswoman and former GOP operative for Bill Haslam and Lamar Alexander, Nashville mayoral candidate Alice Rowley.
We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election.
History made again as a fourth indictment is handed up against former President Trump and 18 other co-defendants accused of trying to overturn the 2020 Georgia election.
And say, Democrats, you want to take all your guns. Well, it's hogwash, and he knows it.
As the special session on public safety approaches, tempers flare among state lawmakers over what will actually be considered.
We're very encouraged that the federal government has decided to take a look into the practices.
A state investigation, a lawsuit, and now a federal civil rights investigation against Vanderbilt Medical Center for releasing transgender patient records to the Attorney General. More in our This Week cover story. Hello again and welcome to another edition of This Week. The race for mayor of Nashville is down to two. Tonight, a conversation with Alice Rowley. Heated words on Tennessee's Capitol Hill as Democrats push for gun reform while Republicans want none of it. A federal civil rights lawsuit filed against Vanderbilt University over the release of patient records. But we begin with the fourth indictment of the twice impeached former president, Donald Trump.
Tonight, the clock is ticking for Donald Trump, given 10 days to surrender in Georgia. The former president charged with leading a criminal organization attempting to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election. 18 of his lawyers, aides, and associates charged along with him.
I am giving the defendants the opportunity to voluntarily surrender no later than noon on Friday, the 25th day of August, 2023.
Fulton County District Attorney Fonnie Willis charging Trump's alleged conspiracy to unlawfully change the outcome of the election began on election night, declaring he had won even though he trailed by millions of votes and was losing significantly in the Electoral College.
We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election.
The sprawling racketeering indictment unspooling a relentless 9-week pressure campaign, including 11 phone calls from Trump to Republican officials, including this one to Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger.
So, look, all I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state.
The man who allegedly set up that call, then White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, facing charges too.
So, Mr. President, everybody is on the line, and just so, this is Mark Meadows, the Chief of Staff.
Today, Raffensperger reacting to the indictment, saying the most basic principles of a strong democracy are accountability and respect for the Constitution and rule of law. You either have it or you don't. The pressure campaign, just part of the alleged conspiracy. Prosecutors say it also included a plot to recruit bogus electors, going so far as to send false votes to Washington. Other defendants charged with breaching voting equipment and stealing data, including ballot images, voting equipment software, and personal voter information. Trump's former lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, who as a young prosecutor pioneered using racketeering laws to bust the mob in New York, now charged with being part of a criminal enterprise himself. The indictment pointing to his vicious personal attacks on two poll workers, Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss, falsely claiming they were stealing ballots.
Quite obviously, surreptitiously passing around USB ports as if they're vials of heroin or cocaine.
Today, Giuliani defending himself.
I'm indicted for being his lawyer. I never thought I'd ever get indicted for being a lawyer.
District Attorney Willis says she wants to try this case in 6 months, and it could all play out in front of cameras. She was asked if she wants to try all 19 defendants at the same time.
Do I intend to try the 19 defendants in this indictment together? Yes.
All 19 defendants have been given that deadline of noon next Friday, the 25th of August, to show up. Former President Trump hasn't said when he's going to appear, but when he does, it's going to be because of his own words. The indictment mentions those 11 phone calls trying to strong-arm Republican officials. The Republican governor of this state, though, was emphatic. Brian Kemp saying the 2020 election in Georgia was not stolen. Aaron Kitursky, ABC News, Atlanta.
The countdown is on to the special session on public safety just days away. Republicans have taken gun reform off the table. So, what could potentially win approval? News 2's Chris O'Brien with a look at what's possible and flaring tempers among lawmakers.
And what's a surprise to nearly no one, gun reform is essentially off the table at next week's special session. Speaker of the House Cameron Sexton and other Republican leadership told us last week there would be nothing surrounding that. Instead, Governor Bill Lee opened the floor to a host of other possibilities like mental health reform and juvenile justice. A few things you might see include expansion of mental health access through the state's 10 Care program and increased penalties for threatening mass violence. Though Democrats are in favor of mental health reform, they're irate over the juvenile justice inclusion and the lack of gun reform. But Lieutenant Governor Randy McNally told us last week that Governor Lee's proposal to take guns away from people who the courts deem a threat simply just doesn't have the votes.
I continue to support it. It won't be an item that's discussed in special session, though.
Why not?
Well, I think the votes aren't there. I think there needs to be a little more education.
There's no room in that proclamation to address firearms, to expand background checks, to do these types of things we know we need to do, that other states, mind you, have done. Florida, Indiana, conservative states. I mean, there are direct correlations between passing certain laws and reducing gun violence. Why don't they want to discuss those? Why don't they want to even consider those and have an adult conversation about them, pass them or not?
Now, just a week out from special session, we're getting an idea of a few bills that are gaining traction. The first is one from House Majority Leader William Lamberth. It would require schools to train teachers and students how to respond to an active shooter threat in addition to a fire threat.
It's starting to become obvious to some of these killers that if the alarm goes off, the hallways will be flooded with children. We don't ever want that to happen. We want to make sure that if an alarm goes off, that everybody is thinking, okay, is this a fire? Is this an active shooter? Is this a tornado or something else? Is it a natural disaster?
The Senate Republican caucus released a list of its initiatives this morning, including one to increase the penalty for threatening mass violence from a misdemeanor to a felony.
I think that takes the guns out of somebody who's got a screw loose, you might say.
Though Democrats are cautiously supportive or have no opinion of those bills as they currently stand, tensions continue to boil, especially over the accusation that Republicans are using special session to jam through harmful legislation in a matter of days.
Governor Bill Lee obviously worked with extremist legislators to craft this proclamation, and what he did is he closed the door on any real gun safety legislation.
Just today, a new batch of drama. House Democratic Caucus Chairman John Ray Clemens accused Calhoun Republican Senator Adam Lowe of trying to intimidate Democrats while they're on their bus tour around the state. The move comes after Lowe posted on Facebook encouraging the McMinn County Republican Party to show up at the Democrats' next bus stop at the county seat of Athens, and to give them an accurate sampling of what District 1 values. Though Clemens points out Lowe tweeted that the senator expressly invited them on August 3rd.
They just want to, put out all this misinformation, try to get people riled up, and say, Democrats, you want to take all your guns. Well, it's hogwash, and he knows it. And that's what's so offensive, is that he knows it and he's still spreading that type of misinformation.
Lowe responded to the Clemens tweet by saying he was encouraging discourse and, quote, if you don't want a good sample of the district there, just say so. Just say it's a Democrat-only rally. In Nashville, Chris O'Brien.
Now to our This Week cover story. A state investigation, a lawsuit, now a federal investigation. A hospital spokesman for Vanderbilt confirms Vanderbilt Medical Center is the subject of a federal civil rights investigation after releasing the records of transgender patients to State Attorney General Jonathan Skrmetti. News 2's Adam Mincer has the story.
For attorney Tricia Hertzfield, this is about a violation of trust between a patient and their doctor, and she's glad the federal government is stepping in.
The more that we learn from our clients and from Vanderbilt about the types of information that was shared, the more concerned that we are.
Hertzfield represents 2 Vanderbilt Medical Center patients. Both claim when the hospital shared patient information to the Attorney General as he investigated the hospital's gender-affirming care billing practices, Vanderbilt Vanderbilt failed to protect their highly personal information.
Photographs of body parts, records of medications that they're on, different types of mental health treatment they may have had in the past, ophthalmology appointments.
The Attorney General called the investigation, quote, run-of-the-mill, and said this investigation is directed solely at VUMC and related providers, and not at patients or their families. The records have been and will continue to be held in the strictest confidence. Hertzfield says the Department of Health and Human Services now looking into this is a positive sign for her case.
We're very encouraged that the federal government has decided to take a look into the practices that Vanderbilt has engaged in here, and we look forward to seeing how their investigation turns out.
Stay with us. This week continues in a moment, and a conversation with Nashville mayoral candidate Alice Rowley.